Hey y'all, how you doing today? I'm Organic Sister. This is Black Girl World. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you are well. In today's video, I'm going to sit down with my cousin who has PCOS. So in my last video, we talked about PCOS, Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome, and it basically went through a rundown of the condition and how it affects women and what it does to your reproductive system and all that. So in today's video, I'm going to actually sit down with my cousin who has PCOS, and we're going to talk about her own personal experience with it and how she handles it, how she deals with it, and things that has helped her, and hopefully can help some women out there. Stay tuned. Alright, well, thank you so much for joining me today. So you know why you're here. We're going to talk about PCOS, Polycystic Ovary Syndrome. This is my cousin, Perpetua Charles, and she's been dealing with PCOS herself, and we're here to talk about her own experience with it. Thank you for joining us. Yay!
My pleasure.
Yay! So in your own words, please explain to us, what is PCOS?
In my experience, PCOS is a hormonal and metabolic syndrome. And syndrome meaning that it presents itself with like a number of symptoms that are not a disease that is like degenerative to your body. So it's really frustrating and can like decrease quality of life, but it is not life threatening. So that's good to know.
That is good to know.
But yeah, that would be like my personal definition, based on my research and based on visits to the doctor.
Okay. Well, speaking of the doctor, what are some of like the signs and symptoms that you yourself have experienced that made you like warranted a visit to go to the doctor? Like something that came up to you, like, okay, I need to get this checked out.
Well, the biggest sign was the fact that I didn't have regular periods. With PCOS, there's a more common one is to not have a period every month, but the less common version of it is to have a period like too many times, like a cycle that's like 21 days or fewer. But I have anywhere from like 7 to 9 periods a year, which is not how many you should have.
No. That's actually one of the classic signs of PCOS, that you get the infrequent periods and stuff. So when you do have your period, what's going on?
So it's changed a little bit over the last several years, but the symptoms that used to really be a hallmark for me, especially in high school and college, were like the first 2 to 3 days would be marked with heavy bleeding. Like I would be just pale as a ghost and weak and tired because I was losing a lot of blood and I was losing it fast. And the cramps were out of this world.
I can imagine.
The cramps were awful.
Right. It was painful, huh?
Yeah. I have a memory in high school of being in my bathroom, just going to my bathroom, like, take care of business during my period, and then, like, being struck with cramps so badly after I was ready to get out that I couldn't. I was slumped on the floor crying. My mom was like, where'd she go? Aww. And she had opened the door on me, and I am crying in the corner, like, totally incapacitated, unable to get up. The cramps were really bad.
Aww, poor thing.
Yeah.
What can you say that has helped with the pain and the cramps and stuff? Anything that you've done special?
My mom had suggested having some like tea with star anise, or which is like, can you star anise, or like fennel seeds, which is also anise.
Yeah.
Fennel tea, chamomile tea, or star anise tea. Those are really soothing to just that whole area. And a heating pad.
Yeah, heating pads are like my best friend.
Yeah, I have one of the old school hot water ones that you like put the boiling hot water in.
The rubber.
Yeah. So I just like put that. I don't even like wrap it in anything. I just like make sure I have like a thick enough like material for my shirt, and then just like put it right on there. Ooh, it's soothing.
It helps, yeah.
I just sit there and like sip some tea and like watch a show, and I'm like, this is what I need to be doing right now.
Yes. For me, with I have endometriosis myself, and I find that actually helps out a lot. The tea, the hot water pad is like laying down, relaxing, and just like So yeah. So tell me, what were your first thoughts when you were given, your diagnosis, when you first were told, okay, you have PCOS, this is what polycystic ovarian syndrome is, and you have it. So what was going through your mind when that happened?
Well, I had heard of it, and so it was kind of like, it was confirmed for me, because I had like my suspicions. Mm-hmm. But I had gone to the doctor so many times from when I first got my period. I was like 12 and a half when I got my first period. And it is actually kind of typical while your like menstrual cycle is figuring things out for you to have irregular cycles. Mm-hmm. So after about a year, my mom took me to the doctor for the first time and was like, this is what's happening. And she was like, it's fine. You're like just growing into your cycle. And I'm like, seems like you're waving me away, but fine. And then it would just keep coming up every time I went to the doctor, and they would be like, oh, like giving me a lot of like bullshit excuses, or just trying to wave it away with a pill or something else. When I finally got the diagnosis, that was like 2 years ago, and they asked me a couple of questions that led to the diagnosis. So first they were like, how often do you get your period? I'm like, 7 to 9 times a year. And I'm like, noted, write it down. Mm-hmm. And then they asked me about other things. They're like, do you experience like excessive acne? And I'm like, yeah, on my back. I have hella back knee.
Back knee.
Yes.
Yeah. It's the hormones.
Marks and scars like all over my back. Mm-hmm. And like my upper arms. And then they were asking about like hair growth in places that are typical to males. And I'm like, certainly. Oh. I'm going to shave this area of my face every morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then I think they might have asked a couple more questions, but they were like, those 3 main things like are pretty much like major indicators that you have PCOS. And I was like, oh,
okay.
All right. So like, what do you do?
Right. Like, how did you feel when they told you that?
I was bothered. I didn't like to hear. I mean, it was both like, well, at least there's a name for what this is. Mm-hmm. I was like, good.
Yeah, some answers.
Right. But also like, dang it.
Right. Right. Aw, poor thing.
Yeah.
All right. So what kind of options were you given for treatment?
Yeah, so when I asked them what to do, the very first thing that they told me was to try birth control pill to help with regulating the period.
They gave me birth control pills too with endometriosis.
Yeah. And I had actually been on birth control for about 6 months in college because I was having, there was one cycle where I had like that heavy bleeding that I typically had just in the first few days. Mm-hmm. Every day straight for like about 11 to 12 days. Mm-hmm. It was a time when I was really white as a ghost. And really losing a lot of energy and a lot of blood. And they were like, okay, we need to just put you on birth control so we can regulate this. And I was on it. I never felt quite right about being on it. I was like, this doesn't seem to be addressing the actual issue.
It's almost like putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms.
And I experienced other symptoms that were, frankly, like, just too much for me. Oh. I wasn't willing to deal with them. Just to have regular periods, I've experienced a lot of dizziness and nausea. I tried 2 different prescriptions of birth control, and it was the same thing. And then during that time, I was doing some research on like kind of the untested waters of birth control. Like it's the chances of like getting breast cancer increase and of like suppressing your reproductive system so that when you wean off of it, like it's truly out of whack, like when you're actually ready to like pursue conceiving. And I was like, between a lot of untested waters, I mean, I was on it in like 2011, so it was a while ago now.
Right.
And surely there's been more research since then, and perhaps better fixes too for the things that were wrong about having it, but it still doesn't feel like the right way to address my issue.
The issue, right? It doesn't really get like to the core of what is wrong. It's like I feel the same way too, because it just kind of like I said, it puts like a Band-Aid over everything, kind of like masks the symptoms. I feel like a lot of conventional treatments that we get from the doctors kind of do that same thing, like puts a Band-Aid over everything. It's like, okay, here you have, these are your symptoms. We're gonna like take care of the symptoms, but we're not gonna get to the root. We're not gonna get to the core. Yeah. So did you find things that actually did work for you? That you have been, maybe like diet changes or lifestyle changes or anything like that has worked for you?
Yeah. It's very interesting how it all worked out, because I did a lot of online reading.
Okay. So you gotta do. You gotta educate yourself. You gotta research and educate yourself.
And really. I tend to do so in kind of a wild panic. So I took in a lot of information in a little bit of time, and then tried to apply it the best I could to my life. And one of the things that they were saying was move away from table sugar and sweeten your things with honey, and include things in your diet that are promoting gut health, because of the way that your gut interacts with your reproductive system. So having probiotic foods like yogurt, or taking probiotic supplements themselves, and increasing healthy fats in your diet, like salmon and avocado. And so slowly but surely I was making those shifts, and then of course increasing the amount of exercise that you do. So it was around that time that I really committed myself to getting a gym membership. The money made me go, and that was happening. And for a little bit of time, because I would experience this every once in a while, where I would have maybe 3 or 4 consecutive periods in a row, and I'd be whatever I'm doing is working.
Yeah.
And so when I made these intentional lifestyle changes, I had regular periods for the next 3 months, but then something changed, and I went about 100 days without a period, and was well, whatever was working is not working anymore. I don't know, because I was really strict about it. I wanted to make sure I was documenting things, and then I kind of found myself back at square one, which was frustrating. And one of the things I learned in my reading about PCOS is that the hormonal piece of PCOS is not just the male hormones that increase the hair growth in places that are not typical for women, or the acne. It's also hormonal imbalances that affect your mood. And so mood disorders and PCOS are heavily linked.
Really?
I have other things in my life that already make me susceptible to mood shifts and mood disorders, and then adding PCOS to that. I'll wake up one day and be really, really moody, and I'm am I PMSing? Is it PCOS? Is it PTSD? I don't know which one it is today.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And they can get pretty intense, I bet, huh? Yeah.
Because that's another thing about PCOS, is that you'll experience all of the symptoms of PMS. Your body, kind of how you were describing once before about PCOS, the egg doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
So your body is gearing up to do everything it's going to do in order to release the
egg,
egg, and then it just doesn't.
Right.
And so that includes the premenstrual symptoms.
Right.
I will have whatever grab bag of symptoms it is today, and then I'll experience them for a week or 2, and then nothing happens. And I'm
so do you find that this happens during the time of your cycle when your period is supposed to come? And then you'll get the classic symptoms and the mood swings and everything when your period is supposed, and then there'll be no periods, everything but the period.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, that's interesting.
Totally.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Okay. So how's PCOS treating you now? Right now, as compared to when you first found out? I should say more how have you adjusted to living with it?
Better. I know my body better.
Okay.
PCOS motivated me to get to know my body better.
That's a beautiful thing. Even though PCOS itself is not very beautiful, but the fact that you know yourself better, I think we as women need to be able to take that control to where we can learn more about ourselves and get to know, who is this person that's looking at me in the mirror.
Right. necessity is the mother of all invention.
Yes.
So like
yes.
I had to, if I wanted to get down to the bottom of it, especially because I didn't want to just put a Band-Aid on it and walk away.
Right.
I would say honestly, like you could, if there weren't so many question marks about like what other things birth control is doing to your body, like, because there's nothing wrong with a Band-Aid, right? But
right.
like you have to, it's like when you have a headache and you take Tylenol, like you want to also like find out why you have the headache in the first place. Right. So that you don't have to keep taking Tylenol.
Right, exactly. You don't rely on it.
So there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. But the birth control wasn't working for me. And then my lifestyle changes kind of were working for me, but then I found that they weren't. And so there was something even deeper happening in my body that I didn't know about, but had to figure out. And I figured it out last summer when I discovered that I have irritable bowel syndrome. My body is a real grab bag of syndromes. Aww. So IBS, because I was going to the gym and I was expecting, and I was doing a lot of like a mix of cardio and like strength training. So I was like, okay, I'm like gaining a lot of muscle, but also I'm gaining a lot of weight. What's going on? What I didn't realize was that I was developing like a number of intolerances to foods, and the foods that I was intolerant to manifested in like serious bloating. Serious bloating. Like I was distended, I was like rock hard.
Oh wow.
In my stomach. And it all kind of like literally exploded.
Oh wow.
At some point during the summer. And then I had to do a lot more like reading and researching and learning about IBS. And then that required, more intense lifestyle changes than PCOS, like at least compared to what I had done for PCOS and IBS. And after about 3 months, 2 to 3 months of like maintaining kind of like a new diet, my period started coming like clockwork, and that's like never happened before. Never.
Yeah.
Before I would get my period, it would be like I got it for the first time every single time. I'd be like, "What is this?"
Yeah. Like, oh,
what are you doing?
Like, hey, old friend, how you doing? Welcome back. It's been so long.
And now, like, I experience PMS, and I'm like, I want 7 burgers, so it must be coming soon. And like following like, my like cervical mucus is not just like a pie in the sky move anymore. Like the way that like things are generating down there in my lady parts like actually lines up with like what is happening, what's going to happen. And that's been the case since September. So, like, we're about to head towards 6 months, and I've always said, like, I need for 6 months of regular periods to happen for me to say, like, there has been a change, or that I'm, like, somewhat on the way to being cured. Okay. And I'm about to get there.
Well, good for you. The fact that after going so long with irregular periods, and now to have some sort of regularity, and then some form of predictability, it's amazing. It really is amazing. That gives people hope too, to know that when you get the diagnosis of PCOS, it is not the end.
Yeah,
it's not. You just need to like learn about your body, just like how you said. You learn about yourself, you learn about your body, and then you just gotta take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And then once you start doing that, it's like now there's hope now. That's good. That's amazing.
Understanding that PCOS is hormonal and metabolic, meaning like your metabolism, the way that you process food, digest it, and send it out of you. Like that, I guess I like knew that, but I wasn't really like taking that information and applying it to like the way I ate, like fully,
right.
I was just like reading that they were like, add more salmon. I'm like, okay, adding more salmon, and like not thinking about like what I was already eating and what that could be like those kinds of things. Okay. Especially because like a lot of the foods that I can no longer eat, or that I have to like find ways around eating, were like some of my favorite foods that are also comfort foods. And so it made me confront a lot of things. I had to confront like what kind of relationship I developed with food over time, and like really like find a new way to like manage my emotions and all those other things. But it made a lot of sense that once I discovered this like digestive issue with myself, which was causing like bloating, gas, diarrhea, constipation at any given moment. And then like taking those things out of my diet that were causing that, like it kind of addressed multiple things. My IBS was addressed. It's something I like technically still have. I still have it. I just manage it. And then my PCOS was also like the severity of it was also lessened as a result. So I still have it because I still have to shave my chin every morning. And I still get really painful back knee, especially at the top of my back. But it's not, like, clearly there's something happening with my hormones. Like there's something like a little bit aligning. My metabolism is like figuring itself out a little bit, which means that like the reproductive organs part of it is like a little bit better as a result.
That's good. Well, I'm glad that it's doing better for you. It's working out good. Quick question: do you plan on having kids one day? Good for you. And the fact that you have this PCOS managed and everything, that is like it's gonna make trying to conceive like so much easier. Because I know a lot of people who do have PCOS and they have a lot of trouble conceiving. Sometimes I think it's like an infertility, and like, yeah, that could be like that could be like the result of it, but it's not the end all, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I thought like it can make it harder.
It can make it harder, right? That's the word I'm looking for.
Is what I've learned from all the reading I did, that it can serve as a roadblock, but it's not necessarily the cause.
Right.
It's just like, or it doesn't mean that you're like, 100% infertile. Right. PCOS does not equal infertility. PCOS equals you have to be creative about finding ways to conceive. Exactly. And that's why like charting your cycle is really important. Like you can do that in a number of ways by like taking your basal body temperature, which like I'm not all up in that quite yet, but I do like track my moods and symptoms in a period tracker app. And even though it's like not 100% accurate, it's like, especially now that my like lifestyle and diet is like really honing in on my menstrual cycle, it's kind of like within a week window. And so when I start adding more of those complicated steps, like literally checking my cervical mucus and checking my basal body temperature, mixing that with all that other information about my mood, my symptoms during PMS, and like just the general like logging my chart of like when my periods are, all that information together means I know when to expect things, when to expect that I'm going to have like a spike in a certain kind of mood or a downturn in mood, or like when I'm going to need to take time to like clear my schedule and give myself some more time to rest because like, you know, the period's coming. So there's ways, I mean, it's not just about like having a baby, because like I'm not at that part in my life yet. Right. When the time is right. But it's good to know all of that right now because of those other things. Yeah, because like you need to be taking care of yourself right now, not waiting until you're going to have a child or waiting until something happens. Like today's the day to be taking care of yourself. Right. So participating in all of those steps and getting to know your body that way means that you know like when your body needs more TLC, like when you need to give yourself more time to rest and relax. Yeah. And that's, I think everybody is on a really interesting journey of like self-love and self-care. I know. I feel like that's like the movement nowadays, and I love it. Yeah. I absolutely love it, yeah. Because we have been asked for so long to just like please everybody else and like just work really hard and like achieve like kind of lofty goals. And we have kind of been conditioned to forget ourselves in the process, which I think is why it's so easy for practitioners to just prescribe birth control or some other kind of like quick measure to like make it seem like everything's okay. It takes the edge off of like what's concerning to us as women. When we're not getting regular periods, we're like told that's what's supposed to happen. It doesn't happen. So we're like, well, and then they just give us birth control and we're like, okay, I have regular periods now, so fine. But we're not thinking about, we're not like, we're just kind of moving through life on autopilot, and we're not thinking about like what is it in my daily life? What are the ways that I'm living my life, the ways that I'm eating, the ways that I'm like engaging or like managing or not managing my stress, like contributing to all of this.
Stress is a major factor.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with hormones, you're dealing with stress. It's like they both like they play this they have this little dance that they do together.
Yeah.
Where one would definitely affect the other, and if you don't manage it properly, it can wreak havoc.
Exactly. A lot of my chronic like invisible illnesses, if you will, like have stress kind of in the middle of them. And because PCOS is hormonal, like managing your stress is really important. So in addition to like exercise and eating well, there's also a mindfulness piece, finding the thing that works for you, praying, meditating, yoga, all three, or just like journaling, taking a moment to like think about yourself, meaning like step away from like what is crazy and like go do something for yourself. Right. I had a dance party in my room this morning and I haven't had one of those in a very long time.
That's so great.
Like, I guess this is what they mean.
Yeah, I mean, even doing that, that's like, you know, you dancing with yourself and like just living in the moment, you know, and just like just love being present. Exactly.
Yeah, it aligns your body. Like I always say I wish that like all of our hormones like had different lights. And they would like flash if something was off, and you'd be like, "Oh, I'm yellow today. I gotta go take care of that." I wish.
It'll make things so much easier.
Yeah, and so like you can't know everything, and so you also have to be really patient with yourself. Like when I first got the diagnosis, I just was like, I have to fix this, and I have to fix it right now. And so I just went and read a lot, and was like, more salmon, more avocado, where's the weights?
That's so hilarious.
And that's like one way to do it.
Right.
But I know I was adding more stress to myself, to my life, by just like insisting on like fixing it right now. Because when I was talking to my doctor about it was because I was like, you know, my boyfriend and I like had really entered into a space where we were like, we are absolutely committed to one another, and like we really are committed to like becoming a family and growing a family one day. And then it just like made me really anxious because I was like, but I have no idea what's going on down here. I've always been a regular what if, like I conceived when I didn't mean to, or what if I can't ever conceive, like what? And then that's what prompted me to go and ask a doctor about it for like the 80th time. And I was frustrated by her answer to just like take birth control. And I was like,
I feel like that's not enough. Like,
yeah. I was like, what am I like doing that I shouldn't be doing? Right. Or what am I not doing that I should be doing? That's why I did all that research. But I thought that like if I just lifted more weights and like got rid of table sugar and ate more avocado, it would be fine. Right. And it's like not really that simple. Like it's a holistic approach that we have to take.
Yes. And holistic means the whole picture. You gotta look at the whole picture.
Your entire life, everything that you're doing. It's like what environments are you in that are contributing to stress? If you can leave it, why are you still there? If you can't leave it, how can you manage the stress that it causes until you can? Like these are the things that you're like you constantly have to be thinking about them, and it's like really exhausting. But as we get better at it, like practicing doing so, then like the moment that something goes off in our mind that feels wrong, like we're just going to be like, that isn't for me. Cause like this doesn't contribute to like my whole body health. And like that means my IBS is going to be out of whack. That means my PCOS is going to be out of whack.
So everything's kind of like connected. Everything's like linked to whatever.
Yeah. Your brain and your gut are connected, which is why like I had a major increase of stress that led to IBS, and your brain, gut, and like reproductive system are also all connected. And so there's a lot of suppressing that happens when like your stress hormone is flooding your body. It suppresses your immune system. It suppresses your reproductive cycle. It can suppress functions in your gut as well. Like because the stress hormone is like telling your body like, stop all the presses, like stop everything. We just need to survive this moment, like whatever's happening. And it could be that like we, at one point in our lives, we were in a position where we like really were needing survival, but like that's not the case anymore. And like we've kind of just been conditioned to think that like somebody giving us bad news is like a reason to be like stressed to the max like that.
Right.
And so that's where like having like some sort of mindful practice that you are really good at like comes in handy in moments like that, so that you don't run the risk of like kind of setting yourself back with PCOS and other issues that are caused by or that are linked to like stress hormones and like the gut mind connection.
Right. So I have another question for you too. What kind of I guess support systems did you find yourself with, like outside of just being mindful and taking care of yourself? Like people in your lives, have you found them to be supportive? Maybe some supportive, some not so much, or what was your experience?
So I sought out people who also had reproductive issues. People I already knew, like yourself. And some of my other friends who were like, on some sort of phase in their journey where they're like still discovering what's going on, or they knew full well and they had kind of a handle on what's going on. And just like telling them like, hey, I've apparently joined the club, and I just want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's really validating. Like that's another really important part of it. Managing the stress that comes with that is not just like, you don't do it only by yourself. There are some things you do by yourself, but there is a large part of it that involves community. So just talking to people who also have these experiences, similar or the exact same, and like getting notes from them, getting an idea of what they do, trying something, experimenting with stuff. Right. Like it just makes you feel like you're moving towards something, right? And not just like sitting here stuck with a diagnosis that you like can't get out of,
right?
Because that's really scary.
It is scary. I feel like just talking to people about it, not only does it help yourself because you're not keeping everything in, it helps other people too. Because you have no idea what other people are going through until you talk about it, And you have no idea. This is the reason why we're sitting here today right now, because I feel like your story can help so many people out there. And this is what I want to do. I just want to help people, learn about themselves and just, I kind of have that, that moment of empowerment. So while we're on the topic of that, I know we, just gave a lot of advice, a lot of good advice and everything, but is there anything like, wrapping things up where we could just, if you were sat down with somebody who just found out they have PCOS right now, what kind of advice would you give them?
Don't panic. Don't panic. Don't panic like I did.
It's not over.
It's not over. If you are the kind of person who likes to get up and do a lot of research, do just a little bit a day. Spend like 30 minutes reading about stuff, and then like go outside or like watch a show. Like do not obsess over it, because all that information is going to be there. And you can only apply so much of it at a time. And then, like, don't just do one thing and think that that's the fix-all. That's what I did, too. And when it didn't work, or when it kind of fell off, I got really disappointed. And I thought, like, there's something wrong with me. Like, I wasn't doing enough. But there's a whole world of things for you to try. All kinds of ways to learn to manage your stress and be mindful. All kinds of shifts that you can try in your diet. There are all kinds of like diet plans, and you find the thing that works for you, because every physical body is different. Each individual is going to have that has PCOS is going to find that one aspect of it affects them more, and therefore one aspect of like managing one's physical body is going to help it more. For some people, it really is about like managing weight and going to the gym. For some other people, it really is about making a change. To others too, it is really about managing stress. And I have found that changing my diet was one of the biggest things. But that doesn't mean that the work is done, because I have so much work left when it comes to managing my stress. And that could be like the next big thing that really like, I wouldn't say, I don't know anybody who can actually truly say that they're cured. I
don't think there is a cure.
Currently
honestly.
There isn't.
No.
But
But you can manage it.
You can manage it to the point where it's like you barely remember you have it.
Right.
You know, and you can live a full life. You can live a full life without it. So that's another thing I'd say is like, don't lose hope either. When you have moved beyond panicking, also don't lose hope. Don't just say that this defines me now. Like, you are so much more than anything that is happening to you, because it's all about how you respond to it. Yes. If you let PCOS be a death sentence that says you're never going to have kids, you're never going to have a family, and you're always just going to like bleed without notice, then, you know, it'll fulfill itself. The prophecy will kind of fulfill itself.
Self-fulfilling prophecy, right.
But taking charge in the ways that you can, you know, there are parts of it you can't control, because even when you do everything right, sometimes you're going to skip a period and you don't know why. You know, and you can review and try to think about it and try to get to the bottom of it. But if you can't find any answers, you just keep moving forward, because, I don't know. Life is too short to like really obsess over things that like don't have any reasonable meaning on this earth.
Right. Thank you. Is there anything else you want to add for our viewers out here?
I hope I get to talk about something else here really soon.
Well, hopefully we'll see you back. I mean, don't be a stranger. And thank you so much for sharing your story, for sharing experiences. I'm sure you've helped so many people out there. Thank you so much.